Hey folks, welcome to Market Technical Analysis by InTheMoneyStocks.com, your leaders in pure technical analysis, avoiding all that Wall Street hype. Today, Friday, February 27th, 2009. Well, we're seeing a little bit of a down day on Wall Street, folks, but it's not a big down day like it was earlier this morning. We had an ugly sell-off pre-market. Futures were actually down 18 to 20 points at one point. The market looked like it was going to open down 150, 200 points on the Dow, and ultimately what we did see is a nice push-up from the gap down. Now, oftentimes you guys will notice, and this is something you generally want to watch for, when the market gaps up, it usually fills the gap to the downside. Oftentimes when we gap lower, you'll see a nice push to the upside, and that did happen today, all right? And what I want to show you a good example by, just look at here. Look at here on yesterday's chart. We gapped higher, made a little move higher, and then ultimately sold all the way down, filling that gap right here on the chart. So this is a good example. It happened today basically, but the reverse. Here you gapped lower, and you rallied all the way back. Now, you haven't filled the gap yet, but you have made a nice push up. Now, what to think of this market? Is it bullish, bearish, intraday? Right now, you have to give the market the benefit of the doubt off of this pattern currently forming. I'm going to go into all the key trend lines that you should be watching here, but one thing I can tell you right now is that you're really hovering near the highs on this market, a little bit off of them. As you can see, we were as high as up here, but you're hovering still above this 20 moving average on the intraday. That's giving me a little confidence as long as that holds. If that holds, and there's a trend line here I'm going to show you that really coincides with it, which if the trend line holds, the market should have a positive bias here. If this trend line breaks, then I think we could go back to the lows of the day today. So this is going to be the key trend line you're going to follow intraday, and I just want to reiterate, guys, these trend lines I draw on the intraday chart, I do it because it's to show you what we do in the Research Center on the daily charts, the weekly charts of these different stocks we analyze, the markets we analyze, the oil, gold, U.S. dollar. It's really an explanation and a little showcase of what we do in the Research Center for our premium subscribers, but you're getting it on the intraday. But the importance here is this. You can do this on any time frame, and it works. Time frame analysis, price pattern time, technical level analysis, trend line analysis. This is what the keys are to being a profitable trader. Learn them, you will be profitable or much more profitable. Now, the key trend line here I'm going to draw on first is this one, guys. Take this low candle of the day, the second candle of the day, extend it right here, and this is what you're watching. And all of a sudden, we're beginning to tick down, all right? So take a look at that, and what you're going to see now is watching this line. Notice how you're starting to break below us. If we close below this, this is the trend line in the beginning of the video I said needs to hold, and we could see more upside. If this fails, I said we could go back to the lows of the day. All right, so watch that very closely here. To me, this is a big trend line intraday and needs to be watched. We are starting to sell off a little bit here, and that's a little concerning if you're looking at not necessarily the downside, all right? So you might see more downside here if we close below. Very early on in the candle, 1 minute into the candle on this 10-minute chart, you can easily recapture it and move higher. So we'll kind of take a look at that. General Electric just announced they cut the dividend, folks, cutting the dividend from 31 cents to 10 cents beginning in quarter 3. So that news may affect the market. It is pushing down GE, guys. And look at GE here on this chart. Wow, volume coming into this market absolutely huge right now as this news is coming through, guys. Big move on volume. Alrighty, guys, so I'm going to flip over to the GE chart here, and look at what's going on here. You're having a sell-off and then a reversal, and General Electric just all over the map right now as people don't know what to make of their dividend cut. Alright, I think ultimately it's the right thing. They have to do it if they're going to actually survive. General Electric, again, cutting that dividend. Now let's go back to the SPY, because when it comes back to this SPY chart, folks, it's very imperative we watch this, because this line, notice how we're now moving back up on the trend line, back to this line. This is a very important line going into today's afternoon action. Alright, watch that very closely. Should we start to break up, you're going right to gap fill. Gap fill would be the next spot to watch, and that would be right in line right here, as you guys can see on the chart. Alright, and that is something to watch for, guys, no doubt about it. Right in that gap fill area to keep an eye on. Now, a couple other odds and ends, guys, that I want to focus on, that I want to look for on this chart. A lot of them revolve around some backdated stuff here, and the market's starting to sell again. So, as quickly as we move up, we're moving down now, and really starting to tank. And you can see here, and look at that sell candle here, guys, that sell candle on the SPY, and this is the line you're watching. You close below this, guys, you're going to go test these lows again. All right, here's that gap fill line I just drew in, and really what you're looking for here is a break here, and it looks like we're getting that now. Now, this market's going crazy right now. I mean, literally the volume surge, what a time I picked to do this video in this market, is this just going crazy. But really what you're ultimately looking for possibly here is a move back to the lows of the day as long as we break that level. This is really what you have right now. Gap fill would be your upper resistance. Your break of this trend line sends you most likely down to here. There is a minor support level right here on the chart, guys, and I want to draw that in as well. So keep that in mind. These are your intraday levels, folks. Very, very key intraday levels. Now, there's a couple other levels here I really want to go over, and they all stretch back from basically the 23rd, 22nd of the month of February, and they're going to take me a little time. I'm going to have to actually go back in the chart, but we'll bring them up very shortly here. Alright, so let's go back and actually find them here. And they all stem back to the lows from Monday. So Monday low, believe it or not, we gapped below that today. And again, just to reiterate what happened today, folks, and it's very, very interesting. What happened today as I draw these lines in, and these are all key levels today to watch, and I want to draw them in here. What happened today was this. This morning, the government came out and decided to take a bigger portion in Citigroup. They decided to convert their preferred shares in Citigroup to common shares. And from that point, you basically had the market following through to the downside. You saw some major selling going on. Very, very powerful selling. And from that point on, you definitely saw the market getting a little weak early in pre-market session. Now, we gapped lower, and this market still, the volume is intense in this market, guys. I can't tell you right now. Huge volume on this GE news. And the futures just rallied, then dumped, then rallied, then dumped back down. And it's really turning out to be quite substantial here on the selling pressure. Alright, and again, I want to draw these lines in here all the way over to show how we got key levels for today to watch. And it looks like I'm going to have to do it right here. Alright, so we'll do our best to draw these in. And just extend it straight over as best we can. And do it from right here as well. Right across. And again, the Citigroup news a little shocked the market. Now, the market doesn't want the government involved. The government does not generally act on a capitalist policy. They will not generally act on that. So from that point, you're going to have some negativity as the government is obviously not going to have its best interest in making shareholders money. So they have a control in the company. You're going to see some possible downside. Now look at the keys in this chart, guys. And I'm extending these lines. It just takes me a little while because we're using such a small window today to show you all these key moves. But look at these as you extend it right over here. And look at how key they were. And I'm going to go over every level here for you guys. But ultimately, look at the move up. You gapped down, you moved right up and touched on this candle, this bottom trend line. This was the low from Monday. Really the closing low from even lower than November. We got a lower close than November on Monday. We never took out November lows till today. Now today we did. Alright, today we definitely did. But look at the first three candles push right up into that first level. You have a red candle that first hits the second resistance level, then pulls back, then consolidation, and a move up to the third level. At which point you pull back, consolidate, hit the third level again, then sell off all the way down here, right back to that secondary level in this lower trend line. Now from that trend line, you start to rally up. You pierce the 20 for the first time, actually break the 20, but right along this upper resistance level, you start to consolidate and then trade back down. We traded up again, down, and then all of a sudden what we're seeing here, folks, is the market actually pulling back, now rallying actually, as you can see this green candle forming on the chart. Now, the key is this, guys. We actually did break this trend line, and at this point, until we recapture the 20, I'd be looking for more downside possible in this market. You recapture that 20, and all of a sudden I'll change my bias to this upper side. The one thing you want to realize, folks, on this chart is notice how many times we tried to get above this trend line and do gap fill. You went up here once, you made an attempt on about 5 candles to do it, came back down, made an attempt on about 2 more, and failed, and now broke down. Oftentimes, and this is a good lesson to learn, the more you try to break something to the upside and the more you fail, the more the downside could be the opposite move. Basically, a failed up move becomes a bigger down move, and vice versa. So just keep that in mind, and again, keep a close eye as we continue to rally back. This line that I just drew in here, and I know it's hard to see on this chart as the chart is very wacky today, but this trend line that hovers underneath the lows of the day all the way up, this will be resistance now to the upside. Alright, you close below it. We didn't confirm it yet. Remember, confirmation is key, so I'm not sold that we're going to break down yet. Really what I'm watching to see is can we recapture. Once we take out this low, then I think this bottom of the day or the low of the day probably will get tagged. But as long as we're trading here, that resistance line will be there. The 20 moving average is right about there as well. And if we recapture that, I would look at that as a possible retest and maybe gap fill possibility. The 50 moving average is just above that, at which point the 200 is just above that, which would be another resistance. On the downside, folks, I'm not even going to go into anything below the low of the day. If we get down to that low of the day, it's going to be ugly, obviously, and we'll have to analyze things a little bit more. But nonetheless, a really wild day. I scalped the FAS this morning, bought it at, I think, $4.80, sold at $5.12, was all over the map. I had mentioned, obviously, that play was closed out yesterday, but I scalped it today in the chat room, as did a lot of members of the chat room as well. Just a reminder, folks, come join the chat. Great chat. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.